Welcome back to the Secret Sun Radio Mystery Hour. We have a returning guest, an OG Secret Sunner, Wayne Matthias. Wayne, it's been a while. How we doing? How you feeling?
Well, it's been an eventful year. And in fact, 1 year ago, I'd had a heart attack and a triple bypass
Oh
operation.
my
I don't know if you
goodness.
know anybody who's been through that, but
No, I
yeah, that
don't.
was what I would call that life-changing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interrupted my work for a while. I'm glad to say that I've made a full recovery. I mean, it was as textbook perfect as I could have hoped for. And
Well, you look good.
it
You got good
Yeah, thank
color,
you.
you look sharp. You look like you're fit, staying in shape.
Yeah, yeah, I think that I had to learn a great deal about health.
Mm.
I educated myself about cardiovascular disease and lifestyle, all the,
Hmm.
and just imagine all the different nutrients and supplements and things you could be using, and that could be alternatives or uh, at least they could deal with things that pharmaceuticals don't. Because,
Mm.
I mean, even though I'm very grateful to the medical system
Hmm.
for having saved my life,
Hmm. Hmm.
at the same time, they don't have a cure. They have treatments. They can give you drugs, and some of them might help, um, but they don't really solve anything. In a sense, kind of like helping you get along. And maybe there's a price you pay for that as well, that
Was this
they aren't.
hereditary, or were you a former smoker, or what do you think?
No, I think there is definitely a hereditary component.
Hmm.
It turns out that there are, people have this in their families, and that will increase the likelihood. There's an element of mystery involved because you could also say that the life that we live, each of us individually, is a major factor in how things develop. And we're all it's a vast subject. I mean, I could say that, I've only scratched the surface of it, but I do think that what I've learned has been helpful. And I'm I'm having to think ahead in ways that I didn't before.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
it's a something that I think when you reach a certain level and place in your life where you start realizing, oh, you know what, I'm not going to be here forever,
No, none of
and
us are.
maybe
Yeah.
and 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 because the time is limited, you kind of have to use that time effectively. So I'm now, even though time management was never my forte, I at least I'm I'm at least a little more conscious of my priorities.
Well, look,
And yeah.
you were formerly a lawyer, right? Aren't you retired?
Oh, no, not a lawyer. I was a clerk in a
Oh,
law firm.
okay.
That's a very different. A
Law
file
clerk.
clerk. Yeah, yeah. So it was just, the minor bureaucratic stuff, just putting the documents away. Back when they were on paper, I started
Mm.
out when they were on paper, believe it or not. And
Well, it
now
wasn't
I
that long
believe
ago.
that, yeah, yeah, I know. Well, things have moved along, and I think that th very soon the next generation of file clerks will be AIs. I have no doubt that somebody.
Do you think that's happening already?
Yeah, well, to some degree. I mean, when I left the firm, there was talk about the new software that was going to kind of increase productivity and make things a whole lot easier. And I would imagine that in the long run, jobs like mine will be just apps on phones, and you won't even. But of course, my firm hopefully will hold on to their human employees and not just replace them outright. I think that would be a mistake. And
Mm. Yeah, well,
I mean,
we're gonna get into
we'll get into that.
yeah, we're gonna get into the
Yeah.
AI stuff in a bit. So you're in recovery. You look healthy.
Mm.
You look hale and ruddy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And I'm writing again. That's
you're
important. You
writing
got to,
again. And you're
Yeah.
talking about
So
you had mentioned leaving San Francisco, the city by the bay. What's that all about?
yeah, well,
You're
think
still
part of
there
that
now, though,
thinking
right?
ahead. Yeah, I'm still here, and it's still cyberpunk dystopia, but it's got a it's sort of been dressed up a little bit because of the current boom. We're having a little bubble right now. So,
Yeah, so to speak.
but yeah, but life is decent for now. But as I was saying about thinking ahead, because I'm going to be growing older, I think about what conditions do I need in order to be comfortable in my old age, assuming that I
Mm,
live that long. And so I'm thinking, hey, I need to be in a place which is more accessible. So, if you know people who are well along in years, sometimes they might actually have difficulty getting in and out of their home because they have stairways, you know. That's
mm,
not a position you want to be in. My next door neighbor is in that position. She's been living away in a senior home for the last 4 months because she
mm,
simply cannot get in and out of here.
mm.
And secondly,
Ah,
secondly, because we know that, we're in this period of imperial decline,
hmm.
that the social safety net is starting to fray pretty
Yes,
badly for a lot of
yes,
people. And
yes.
the sensible countermeasure is to try to reduce your living expenses
Mm,
so that even if those services are not there the way they used to be, you may still be able to afford to live. And
mm.
there are definitely cheaper places than San Francisco and California in
So I've
general, I
heard.
gotta
So
say.
I've
You know,
heard.
but the thing about living anywhere or moving anywhere is that it's going to be a compromise. You're going to
Mm,
be dealing with, you got to balance out like factors like what kind of people live there? What's the climate like? Can you tolerate it?
mm.
And then the cost of living. I mean, there are plenty of places I could go to which would either be roasting in the summer or they'd be freezing cold in the winter. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, I'm
Mm.
a Californian. I got a narrower
Yeah,
window of
you've got a very
tolerance.
small window of
Okay.
opportunity. Yes.
So, I'm going to do some traveling in the next few months, figure out, what kind of places I could, deal with. And hopefully the world doesn't fall apart in the coming year because nobody knows. I mean, this year was already pretty chaotic. And
How about Costa Rica? You want to? I have my. Actually, no, it's true. It's funny. My
yeah,
nephew
yeah,
has
yeah.
property down there. He
Mm,
bought a big spread down there. A lot of expatriates there. A lot of retirees, American retirees, going down to Costa Rica. I hear it's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
nice. Pretty nice. Good
Well,
weather.
yeah,
Good beaches.
yeah, I guess my own I have a natural lazy streak about the amount of effort required to be an expat. There's like all
Yeah.
these hurdles you have to jump through to get to live as a resident in another country. And
Mm.
also, I feel a certain hesitation about being at the mercy of a foreign government. I
Oh,
mean,
right, right.
my own government is bad enough. I mean, but at least it's a known quantity, and I'm a native speaker of the language. If I were in a country where the local language was not my own, and who knows, their opinions of Americans could change, I just think, wow, that's taking a bet, that's a bet that I'm not willing to make right now. I mean, things would have to be like more desperate, meaning like, death squads coming after me or something. And I like to think that I won't be in that position, and
Yeah.
maybe if I say the wrong thing in my book or something, the men in black will come around and we'll have to
Well,
we'll have
just
to work
remember
out a deal.
Philip K. Dick's experiences
Yeah,
with that. So you're working on a book right now, and I really want to get into this
yeah,
because we want to talk
yeah.
about spiritual sci-fi, and I want to get a sense if your experiences, your health experiences, play into the development of your work because you are working on a rather ambitious rather ambitious novel as far as dealing with a lot of very heavy, heavy issues. Um, what can you tell us about that? Tell us as much as you're comfortable with, but I'm very interested in getting into this and getting into the whole idea of, spiritual sci-fi, which has always been kind of a marginal part of the field. Um, but if you look at people, of course, like Philip K. Dick and others, a very important part of the field, I would say, in many ways. There seems to be an ability to reach into maybe corners that if you're writing strictly materialistic, naturalistic, reductionist sci-fi, science fiction based in consensus science, you're losing out on a lot of possibilities that you can insert into the work. So tell us about the book. I'm very much interested because, as I said, Wayne had sent me this list of issues. And boy, I'll tell you, each one of these, practically every list, I mean, every item on this list here could be a full talk in and of itself, a full podcast. So let's get into the book. Tell us about it. Tell us, first of all, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, I had been interested in the themes of trying to bring together a lot of different subjects that were of interest to me, including um, mind control, psychedelic drugs, the high-tech world, magic,
Hmm.
and also the whole end of the world um, scenario.
Hmm.
Because I think that part of what has been driving science fiction for especially for the last 40 to 50 years is the fear of everything coming to an end one way or another. The and unfortunately, as a cautionary tales have not seemed to be effective in terms of, to whatever extent humans are capable of directing their fate. Clearly, warning people about scenarios doesn't seem to change things very much. And maybe the whole, in fact, it almost feels as if warning people is actually drawing them towards the thing you're warning against, which is it's a disturbing paradox. And so I now
But it's
realize
totally human
maybe,
nature. I mean, that's as old as mankind, that story, you know?
hmm,
Like
so
don't touch that stove. It's hot.
yeah,
The
yeah,
first thing you
really. I
know,
mean,
the kid's going to touch that stove, and it's just the way of the world, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's like you just take the whole. You could look at all of the developments, especially this whole this you might call the second wave of technological explosion from the 1980s to the present, and you go, well, wait a minute, look at all these movies that were warning you against doing that, and now you went and just did that, and it's like whether it's genetic engineering or AI or robots or meddling with the forces of nature in general. You just go, wow, maybe a different approach is required, is what I'm saying. And maybe what I'm trying to do with reality benders is a kind of jujitsu trick where instead, where you start with a world that as it is, not denying the forces at work, or maybe an adjacent timeline that's very similar, and then showing that actually there are a range of other possibilities that don't have to lead necessarily towards the most dire scenario. Although part of the realism is accepting that there is a life cycle to civilizations as
Mm.
well as to species. And we can't really shy away from that. It's almost like, part of being able to live in this world as, in the human experience. And I'm going to when I use the term human experience with the brackets, that means that I'm talking about the condition of being a human is not all there is. It just happens to be the way things look to us right now. because
Mm.
you see, because there's many ways of being that are not human, and
Yes, like all those
they aren't
wonderful
necessary.
animals in the world. Yes.
Yeah, well, there's animals, and then there's like, if you believe in the whole spiritual hierarchies,
Mm.
then there might be ones that are supernatural or subnatural, depending on the terms you want to use. I'm I'm not going to try to drag in the whole pantheon of possible entities out there that might be participating within our reality, but
Yeah,
I
that's a
do,
bit ambitious for a
yeah,
mystery hour.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
let me ask you
also
this
for,
though. I just want to
yeah,
interject. I have looked, as you know, over the years at particularly the influence of theosophy on science fiction, and really, it's such a underappreciated and underacknowledged influence on so many writers, whether they realize it or not. I mean, one person in particular, I mean, we've got H.P. Lovecraft, who was very heavily influenced by Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, but it's not something that he would cop to as far as buying into the belief systems and so on. But we had a lot of people who did. Edgar Rice Burroughs, for instance, created Tarzan and John Carter. Arthur Conan Doyle was a very serious spiritualist. There are a number, and then of course the most famous recent example would be Philip K. Dick. So we do have this tradition and this influence in science fiction. How do you feel? How do you feel that works today? I mean, is that still valid? Is that still something that people are interested in? Obviously, Star Wars, for instance, is very heavily influenced by theosophy. What is the role of spirituality in today's science fiction? And I will say, up front that I don't follow the field anymore. I have no idea what's going on as far as what's being written about, other than little snippets of things I see online, that a lot of dinosaur sex stories, for instance, are being published and everything. And you
yeah,
talked about
yeah,
romanticy, which I know is a huge issue. And there has been, I have seen just sort of tangentially a lot of talk that a lot of science fiction today is just basically romantic or romance fanfic with certain accoutrements taken from earlier writers. So is there a place in today's audience, such as it is, for, you know, specifically oriented spiritual science fiction? Is that something that has a constituency?
well, that's there's a leap of faith, but I think the faith is based upon what I'm sensing when I, at least in my little corner of social media, when I look at people's openness and curiosity. There are people who are open and curious, thank goodness, and they're looking beyond. They might have started in a scientific background and then gravitated towards trying to find where is realizing that science hasn't explained a lot of things that matter to them. Like there's these perennial questions
Yeah.
about where do we come from? Where are we going? What happens to us when we die?
Hmm.
Does any
The
of
big
this mean
three.
anything?
Yeah, the
Oh
big
yeah,
three.
yeah, yeah. And that, and it happens that there are people who are at the frontiers of physics, for instance, who are now starting to open up their paradigm beyond what it originally was. Let's say, I mean, physics has come a long way since the 1950s, I got to say. I mean, when you look at how we were brought up, believing in matter, for instance, and then gradually over the decades, people started to realize matter actually isn't what they thought it was.
Mm,
And in fact, space-time isn't even what we thought it was. And
mm.
when Phil Dick was making his famous speech in Metz in 1977, I think it was,
Yes, sir.
uh, there
Yep.
was there were very few people around at that time who could really engage with the ideas he was spilling out. I mean, he was just like it was just like coming out of him like he was some kind of oracle, and he just and but if he
Yeah.
were around today, I am convinced there would be many people, highly reputable professionals, who would be happy to engage with him about things like orthogonal time and the whole concept of the matrix or the Mandela effect and the notion of alternate timelines or
Mm.
parallel universes. This is not considered fringy stuff anymore. This is now, you know, uh, you can be a perfect taken be you can be taken seriously in academic circles. They won't laugh at you anymore if you start talking about parallel universes. It's more like, well, it's more a question of do we have enough experimental evidence and can you devise the right experiments that will support this theory, yada yada. And
Mm.
that's perfectly understandable. And of course, things might be, for all we know, things could be further along than we've been told. It wouldn't
I
surprise
doubt
me.
it.
In part,
I doubt that. I doubt
okay,
that. I
well,
really do.
yeah,
I very seriously doubt that. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's okay. Well, for the purposes of my own storytelling, I like to believe that there's some cadre of secret underground breakaway civilization that knows a lot of stuff that the rest of us don't, and they're keeping it to themselves. That just works for me in terms of, where did all those trillions of dollars disappear to over the generations?
Yeah, you got
I
to
mean,
wonder.
it's
You got
just,
to wonder, right? You got to wonder. Well, let me ask
yeah,
you this.
yeah.
Let me ask you this. So we have a situation that I've been talking about for over 10 years now, which some
Oops.
writers call the Great Stagnation. Okay. The
Mm,
Great
mhm,
Stagnation, where all the low-hanging fruit has been plucked. Um,
mm,
and if you look at the curve of breakthrough technologies, you say if you saw it on a graph. I mean, it's basically been we hit a peak maybe about 50 years ago, right? And then it's just been going down
mhm,
steadily ever since. That all the technology that we're working with now was developed somewhere between the 50s and the 60s, maybe even the 70s, right? But the basic
mhm,
principles were already set before, people like Steve Jobs came along. So we're in a
mhm,
situation now with science fiction, and this is something that I've been tracking for a number of years, is that I don't think people really believe in the future anymore. I get a feeling that there
mhm,
isn't this, and this has to do with a lot of the social issues that we're seeing with drug addiction and people staying single their entire lives and so on and so forth,
mhm,
because they just don't believe in the future anymore. And there are reasons for that. And if you really notice, there isn't this kind of drumbeat in the media anymore of that we're all marching towards this glorious future. So does
mhm,
spiritual science fiction, which takes a different tack, okay? It takes a different tack and it goes into what you're talking about with time, space, and advanced particle physics, and a lot of these kind of notions that start to drift into metaphysics, okay? They start to drift into metaphysics. Is this a future for science fiction, or is this the future, perhaps? I mean, are people, once this kind of generation now, writing the dinosaur sex stories and everything sort of falls away, are the people who are going to
mhm,
really bring science fiction forward, or whatever you want to call it? Maybe speculative fiction would be a much better word to use. I mean, that's a use that has been used
mhm,
in the past. I mean,
mhm,
is this going to be the way to move this forward, since all those Arthur C. Clarke space colonization fantasies, I mean, nobody believes them anymore. They just don't. Nobody believes that we're going to
mhm,
Mars. I mean, I say for sure that we're never going to Mars. But so does spiritual science fiction, and particularly the kind of ideas questioning the nature of reality that, we both see in Philip K. Dick, is this going to be a way for science fiction or speculative fiction or whatever you want to call it to get out of its rut and to kind of move forward and become relevant again, is my question to you.
Mm. Yeah, well, when started the Reality Benders, which has gone on, the process has been a couple of years already, which is longer than I expected. I was looking at a number of issues simultaneously, and that was including, well, trying to enlarge the context of the what is going on,
Hmm.
just for the sake of understanding. For instance, the whole notion is, of the idea of magic as a way of actually working with reality as it is. And what does that mean? That's
Mm.
just one thing. And then
Hmm.
there's the
Hmm.
other thing about well, supposing we actually are heading towards some kind of end of civilization or a transition into the next civilization. I was keenly interested in creating a story that was not going to sugarcoat the idea, but rather prepare folks for at least getting their heads around the idea that we are right now able to, we are in some way laying the foundation for the next civilization.
Mm.
It might be the kind of collapse and rebuild process that sounds very nasty and traumatic. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but um, uh, history has shown there's ample records of this, and of course, extinction events have happened multiple times
Hmm.
where, a lot of them happened before the human race even came into existence.
Yeah, there were five of
As
them. Yeah.
not, yeah, there's not really any reason to believe that that couldn't happen again. And indeed, it's quite possible that this is just that cycle is something that we're just going to roll with. That the species, if our species is any good, there'll be someone around,
Well,
and I don't
no,
know if
I
they'll
just,
be
well, here's the thing. I want to get
I know
back.
this.
I want to get back to the point that I was making, though. That
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, I think. My
Hmm.
question to you is that we have this crisis in literacy, we have this crisis in reading that I think everybody who cares should be addressing. Everybody who wants civilization to continue should, you know, take an interest in this problem. Would a spiritually based, and that's a very loaded term that has so many limitations, but maybe
Hmm.
say a metaphysical speculative fiction, would that be something that could bring the genre out of this rut that it's been in for quite some time? When's the last time
Hmm.
anybody talked about a science fiction novel? I mean, I'm
Hmm.
I can't think, like Snow Crash, maybe. I don't know. It seems to be a long time. I mean, when's the last time, a science fiction novel really made an impact on the culture? Now, my question again is like, since you had mentioned how science fiction tries to answer a lot of the same kind of questions that religion has asked, if science fiction becomes a venue for a more expansive, let's just say, a more expansive kind of metaphysics and ontology. Is that something that is going to have an appeal? Is that something that's going to help bring, raise the stakes on the genre, or are we just past that? That's the thing that I'm really curious about because I would love to read, I would love to read some really mind-boggling, thought-provoking, metaphysical science fiction, speculative fiction. I just, I don't even know what there is out there. Um, what what can we do to interest people and to remind people that to be human for thousands of years in every culture around the world has been to ask these big questions, not just to get lost in our own little bubbles, but to ask the big questions and to address these issues and to discuss these issues and raise these issues. Is science fiction going to be a suitable venue for that process, or is it kind of a lost cause? I mean, I'm genuinely curious what you think about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm of the opinion that if the genre doesn't mature or advance, that
Mm,
it's going to become an obstacle to the kind of awakening that actually is just beginning to happen. I think now this may be optimistic. It really depends upon maybe what milieu you um, observe or hang out in. I do feel that there has been in the just the past few years, I think there's been a resurgence of interest in spirituality, and a lot of it is coming is being channeled into a return to traditional religions, for instance. You know,
mm,
if people are more interested in Christianity, well, there's a good reason why. Sometimes folks have been pushed into desperate circumstances to the point where they feel a need, and the need is being fulfilled by what's already available. Although at the same time, they might be discontent to some degree because it's not quite enough in the sense of being up to date. It's rather like if I mean, I grew up in Catholicism, so I'm very familiar with the cosmology and the nature of belief,
hmm
and and also authority systems that arise, which for better and for worse. I mean, I can't knock organized religion in the sense that it fulfilled a need, and it continues to fulfill a real need. And uh, I I'm not surprised that people believe that a return to that would make the world a better place. I mean, at least we might be less, um, humanity might not be its own worst enemy under those circumstances. But it's hard to, but again, we're dealing with organizations that are really old, centuries old.
Well, my
And
concern, my
you
concern with
see,
this traditional thing is that it's becoming an excuse for political identitarianism. That
Mhm,
to me is very concerning because it's fine to identify in a certain way. I identify as a Catholic, for instance, but when it becomes just basically a mirror image of what we see like with wokeness, for instance. Is that something that we need? Is that something that we can use? I don't think so. And this is something that I've been saying for a long time. And you come from Catholicism, I come from Protestantism. And one thing that has always driven me crazy, and I talk about it from time to time, is just, the sectarianism and just the constant
mhm,
bickering about the most meaningless to most people theological minutia, right?
mhm,
So could a metaphysical, a metafiction, let's call it, right? Could a metaphysical science fiction or metafiction for short, um, could that offer a way to bring people together in a way that traditional religion should, but doesn't necessarily have the capacity for anymore, but do so
mhm,
without all the sectarianism, without all the identitarianism, all these kind of things that I think are so corrosive and so self-defeating. If we took it into this other venue, would that be a healthier and more productive way to deal with these human needs that are very real and understandable? Or again, are we just past that? Is it the hour just too late? Is what my question for you.
Yeah, I suppose the notion of it being too late creates a kind of tension that it has dramatic potential there, by the way. I can't help but look at things in storytelling terms that
Mm.
this is important. We're in this is like one of these big turning points, you could say. I mean, I wouldn't doubt, even though, maybe everybody in every era thinks that they're living in some great turning point. Um, right? I mean, it just happens we're here. And maybe 50 years down the road, the people living then will all feel the same way. But there is certainly potential, tremendous potential for things to go even worse, if in the sense that, supposing, for instance, the tech bros decide to create their own kind of tech religion,
Oh, well, that's
where they
happening. That's already
it's already,
happening.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just put it out there as like, yeah, what if, huh? And
Yeah,
it
wouldn't that
just
be
happens that,
crazy?
yeah, I mean, it just happens that Peter Thiel was doing his Antichrist lectures just down the hill from me,
Oh
just
gosh,
it's
yeah.
can you imagine? And it's like, of all people to be talking about the Antichrist, the irony is just, well, you know, it's kind of there here in California, we live with a lot of cognitive dissonance.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, you
Like
have
it's
to.
just like it's part of the air and the water. I mean, just try
Yeah,
to imagine believing that Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi are your best allies to save democracy. I mean, that's just takes it's a little more than I can handle sometimes, but
yeah.
uh,
It takes a denial of
I have to.
reality. Yeah.
Well, it just. But you can see though that belief is a powerful thing. It's not a trivial thing, and
Mm. Yeah, not at
maybe
all.
I see, and indeed, civilizations are built or fall apart either on the basis of belief or the lack of it. I mean, if it feels like things are falling apart right now, I have a feeling that it has a lot to do with this general loss of faith in terms of not the material reality, the promise of modernism
Well, the
has
loss of
failed
faith
so
is
hard.
is pretty much across the board. I mean, this
Yeah.
people have lost faith in everything.
Hmm.
One thing I want to get back to your notes here, because this I found this really fascinating. You said my work in progress, The Reality Benders, comparing its timeline to ours, Burning Man, Silicon Valley, psychedelics then and now, breakaway civilization as MK society, varieties of AI, the LLM, large language model scam, when worlds collide. The what's that? The Velikovsky book? Is that what you're making
It's a
reference
movie
to?
from, remember, the 1950s movie. It's remember, it had a it was one of those great disaster spectacles where
Oh, okay. Oh
they
no, yeah,
they built
I
a
do.
rocket.
Yeah, I'm thinking of
They
Worlds
built
in
it.
Collision is the Velikovsky
Oh,
book.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so cosmic scale magic, new age cult on steroids, you create your own reality. Thought experiment when grifters deliver the goods. And then you have a bunch of other bullet points here that
Yeah,
that are all
yeah,
maybe a little bit more, better suited
yeah.
for
Wait,
another discussion. But so you've got this huge, shopping list here. Now,
yeah. Imagine
what do
that.
you want to what do you want to say about these things,
Uh,
and what do you want to say about these things in comparison or in relation to, the human experience today, our experience, our challenges, particularly the loss of faith, I think is the hugest part of that, or what Verber called, what did he call it? He used the term disenchantment, to become disenchanted.
mhm,
And he saw
mhm.
that as a society-wide malaise. So if there's any one of these issues that you want to tackle here, I know writers never like to, give away the candy store before the book hits the shelves, but I'm just curious, since you have this rather ambitious list, of things to cover. I mean, how do you plan, or how have you already incorporated this into this narrative? And what do you want to say about these things is really the issue here.
Yeah, one of the key elements of the reality benders is that this one of the big challenges, in fact, is that I'm attempting to depict the what could be called a new age mind control cult from the inside.
Mm,
And it's not necessarily even painting anybody as villains, or it's not as simple as heroes and villains,
mm,
in the
hmm,
sense that everybody has their reasons for what they do.
mm,
It just happens that, well, some things are just a little more nefarious looking and in conflict with other people. And
mm,
the when I was referring to, let's say, Burning Man and Silicon
mm,
Valley and
hmm,
psychedelics, I think this is an important these are all like aspects of the counterculture which I grew up in. And indeed, I still have a kind of sentimental feeling about all of this whole weird fringy stuff.
nostalgia. It's
Uh,
nostalgia. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you could say. I mean, there was a period, the early period of Burning Man, which I missed, unfortunately, was when it was being held up just across the bay in Marin County, and it didn't cost anything to go. It was
Mm,
just like a bunch of freaks who were camping out on the beach, and they made art. Maybe they were using the driftwood they found, and it's like, wow, I would have back in the 80s or well, the 90s, I would have loved it. I think that would have been the right time. And indeed, what it turned into was this like, now it's this
like the
big
Hunger Games.
corporation and
Yeah. Yeah.
you got tech bros flying in on the private jets and
But
staying in air-conditioned RVs, and then it's like this whole kind of like an electronic dance music festival a
yeah.
lot of the time, and it's
Well, let
like,
me ask you a
and
question.
I'm going, you know,
Yeah, let me just I just
I'm
want to
sorry,
interject though. No, that's
so,
okay.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
having a bit of a lag here on the audio. But one
uh,
question I did have for you though, and I don't know if you address it in the book, is that I would argue that Burning Man and having our captains of industry, all tech lords, let's call them, in honor of William Shatner, all these tech lords go into Burning Man and blasting their brains out on acid or ecstasy. Do you think that that's had a highly distortive, if not extremely negative influence on our culture and our society? I mean, it's great when when you're out in Burning Man or whatever, and you're dropping acid or whatever, and you have all these epiphanies and everything like that. But that's the subjective part of it. Is the objective reality there something that is hurting us? And is this something that
mm.
you address in the novel?
Well, there are like two aspects at least to this, and I'm not giving it away too much either because
Mm. Yeah.
eventually the book might not be out until like middle of next year at the earliest if I'm the way things go. Um, as far as the um, how the way in which people engage with that subculture, what it does to them might vary according to what kind of people they are to begin with. And so the people who are running the cult in my novel, those are those are not tech bros, but they are like the grifters who are taking advantage of the tech bros
Mm.
because it's
Mm.
they have a new psychedelic drug that they want to turn them on to. This is a
Mm.
and it happens to be like the new God experience, you would say. It's called Epic, by the way, EPIK. And it starts out as the first form is a vape, and the new form, which they're debuting at Burning Man, is an e-drug. It's an app. It
Oh
runs
my
on the phone,
goodness. Yeah.
and you put a headband on, and it has a Bluetooth connection, and you turn it on, and you start tripping. And this is like, I absolutely believe that technology is possible. It just happens that you have to make it
It might
convenient.
already exist. So,
To a degree, I mean, it's kind of like a descendant of the God helmet, which was an invention, I think it's 1970s
mm,
analog technology by,
hmm hmm
but it was bulky. They had to, have this heavy device you had to put attached to a motorcycle helmet, which was just, you have to make it super convenient. So you're not plugged into something and you can't go anywhere. You got to be able to
mm.
so the 21st century version is the app on the phone and a Bluetooth headband. But anyway, the effects of psychedelics can vary tremendously depending upon what kind of person is taking them. So, if you're dealing with somebody who is already naturally psychopathic or sociopathic, you would have to expect different effects. They even if they took the same DMT or LSD, how they come out the other end could be radically different.
Do you think
And
this is where Peter
indeed, it
Thiel
might.
comes from, though? I mean, do you think this is where his apocalyptic mindset is coming from? That would not be
Yeah,
unusual
well,
whatsoever.
yeah, well, I'm speculating here based upon, partly because I sometimes do things intuitively when I can't experience them firsthand. And my guess is that if someone has for instance, a delusion that things that reality can be safely disregarded because it happens to be like a simulation, like a video game, and that everybody in it isn't really real, then you could justify a lot of really very inhuman behavior if you believe that. It doesn't have to be that way. My own take on simulation theory, for instance, which happens to have a lot of traction, especially in the tech community,
Mm.
is that it would be absurd to think that it is actually like a computer program and that we're just code running in some vast
The
supercomputer.
Matrix, yeah.
That's yeah. What that the value of simulation theory is that it can serve as a metaphor. And there are a lot of things which serve us better as metaphors rather than as taking them literally. So the notion as well of, reality being an illusion, that's a double-edged sword because if you start taking the idea also that, philosophically, and I'm using this is a big part, this is a part of the book. You can't really separate the philosophy from this. You can take the position that there either is an objective reality that is distinct from our own impressions of it, or that there is only subjective reality. There's huge consequences for believing either. It's assumed that this is a binary position that you couldn't, it's very common to believe that you have to be one or the other. If you believe in objective reality, that is a single self-existing reality that you and I are more or less in touch with, well, that produces a whole set of consequences, and it can give people a sense of certainty, which is pretty darn important. I think a lot of people need a sense of certainty. The other but if you believe that re reality is an illusion, that is like a dream, or that it is made of consciousness, it's not really solid, and that there are many consequences of that. Some people would say, well, that takes away any objective basis for morality, doesn't it?
Mm.
Well,
Mm.
suppose it does. Supposing it does, and then a lot of folks are not ready to even engage with that, the consequences of that. And indeed, I think just the idea of basic mysticism that, I know it sounds like New Age woo to say things like um, consciousness is reality, or that
Mm.
it is, fundamental, and I actually subscribe to the idea that, of idealism, or as Philip K. Dick put it very specifically, panentheistic idealism. I take it seriously. However, I'm not so attached that I couldn't change my mind. This is an important position to take. And I think that if there's some position that I want to encourage, is that you don't get so invested in one point of view in a conceptual framework that you can't get free of it. That you can't, you have to be able to, at some point, accept new information and be able to change your point of view in light, and I think that I think is a virtue of the scientific view, by the way, if it's practiced correctly.
Mm.
If it's not just scientism, which we've heard the term scientism, where people believe in just going along with the authorities of whoever, whatever the orthodoxy of the moment is. If you take the position that actually you can continually update your reality map, and that's, in fact, one of the beauties of the human experience is that you can do that. And I'm encouraging that. If there's something I can get across, is that in the book, I hope to, some way or another, get across the idea that the characters who are making progress are the ones who are able to get unstuck. And, even if you're in a cult, if you know people, you've probably known people who have been in cults, maybe firsthand. There are plenty of people around who can say, yeah, they used to be in a cult. And that
I do. So
it's
yeah.
a long, it's a long and arduous process to break free of the group mindset, because there are so many, especially when there's a payoff, when there's some benefits to belonging. Can you imagine? That's one of the big draws of the cult in my book, is that it fulfills so many basic needs. Some people are, if they're atomized individuals, wouldn't it be great to belong to something that, greater than, that devotes, gives you a purpose greater than yourself? So you're
Mm.
not, although, and simultaneously gives you a nice place to live and good food to eat and sex and drugs. Oh my God, that's the grand slam, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was actually trying to create a cult that I would want to join if I were like, if I were more,
Rajneesh, baby.
if
Rajneesh. He's your man.
yeah, well, if I were in my 20s and 30s or something, I would be more impressionable. I'm not so impressionable now. And so, in a way, I'm trying to recreate a point of view from my earlier life, which is kind
Mm.
of a challenge. I don't know if you've been in that position as a writer, but um, it depends a lot on memory and imagination. And imagination, by the way, is also something I'm strongly encouraging. And science fiction is one of the avenues. You could say science fiction and fantasy both are
It should be. It
ways
should
to.
be.
It
Yeah,
should be.
they
It
both
should
should
be.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
And when Philip K. Dick was talking in Metz, one of the ideas he got across, he made it loud and clear that he believed sincerely that some of the books that he was writing were glimpses of actual alternate realities.
Hmm.
That
That's true.
he wasn't just making it up. He was literally seeing some other pathway that we had taken or were going to take, both past and future, including the Man in the High Castle when the Axis won World War II. That was
Hmm.
pretty way out. If you're literal minded, you would say, wow,
Well,
that
he
is
actually based
awesome.
that on a novel about the South winning the Civil War. Did you know that?
Oh, really? Well, yeah,
That
alternate
was
history.
his inspiration for it. Well,
Mm,
I want
mm.
to talk about this, Coke, because I want to get back to the fact that a lot of these Silicon Valley people, particularly at the highest levels, seem to have kind of gone a little insane. Let's just say, I mean, Thiel is kind of
Yeah,
the most
yeah,
extreme
it's the
example of
obvious
that.
one.
But so
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, right.
here's the thing that I've noticed is that so if these guys are all going out to Burning Man and blowing their brains out on very exotic hallucinogens, I that concerns me. Now, one of the reasons why
Mm,
it concerns me is that I've known a lot of people over the years who've been what they call psychonauts, right? Now,
hmm
there's always a curve to that whole experience. And there's always a downslope. There's always a peak, and then there's a downslope. And the downslope lasts a lot longer than the peak. And what you
Mm.
have, you'll have people who will either become insane, okay? And I'm sure you know a lot of people like that. But there are also a lot of people who become, I don't know if it affects the serotonin levels or the dopamine. I mean, I'm not exactly sure the brain chemistry at work. But one thing that I've noticed over the years is that a lot of people who are quote unquote psychonauts become depressive, anhedonic, um,
Mm.
very flat and affectless. So
Mm.
the thing that concerns me about this is that we see so much these days offering ketamine and other powerful psychedelics as almost like a panacea. And
Mm.
particularly if you've got like drug resistant depression, things like that,
Mm.
that bothers me. And not because I'm opposed to the use of hallucinogens. I'm opposed to the unsupervised, let's just say, or the religious use. I don't think it's a good idea to imbue psychedelics, hallucinogens with this religious fervor because they open the doors to a lot of influences that we shouldn't be comfortable with. So, are we looking at a situation? Do you think it would be fair to say when you see people like Teal, who's looks to me like a drugged out mess? I mean, he's always sweating and his face is always flush and he sounds like very incoherent a lot. That could be, maybe he's tweaking out on Adderall, but it could also be
Mm.
that he basically burned out his circuits. And another example is Nicole Shanahan, who used to go to Burning Man and hang out with all the big wigs, and now she's like, oh, it's demonic. The whole thing is satanic and demonic and everything. Now, are we at a point now where I don't believe that hallucinogens can live up to the promises being made, but I think a lot of people are going to destroy themselves trying to make them do so. And
Mm.
we both are
Mm.
big Philip K. Dick fans, and he he wasn't as big on the hallucinogens, but he certainly abused stimulants, which had a very, I mean, it killed him. Ultimately, it killed him when he was 52 years old, or no, wait, how old was he?
Mhm.
54, maybe 54.
It
I
was
mean,
in that ballpark.
he
Yeah,
was younger
53,
than he was
54.
younger
Yeah.
than you and I, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and he had a lot. I mean, for all the visionary experiences he had, he also had a lot of delusional experiences. Um,
Mhm.
and it kind of gets hard to split these out. Now, what I think science fiction writers should be doing, and I hope that they are doing, and I hope that you're doing in particular, is pointing out the enormous pitfalls that await anyone who sort of takes on that psychonaut kind of identity. Now, is this
Mhm.
something that science fiction can do? Can it act as a corrective for this very, very well-funded and very aggressive campaign to basically get everybody on hallucinogens, as far as I can tell? And is this something that we can offer a metaphysical rejoinder to, right? We can say, all right, well,
Mm.
listen,
Mm.
it's great. There's been a long history of experience with hallucinogens and spirituality, but it's not enough. You can't just have
Mhm.
that be the
Mhm.
basis where you just drop in ketamine or whatever.
Mhm.
And in the context of the fact that, as I said before, I think this has done a lot of damage to these very powerful figures, which is going to affect us all ultimately. Is this something that we can address through fiction, through stories? you know, because I've always said the best science fiction is cautionary. The most powerful, the most impactful, the most lasting science fiction, speculative fiction, whatever you want to call it, has always been cautionary, just as, prophecy is, right? Prophecy, the point of prophecy
Mhm.
is saying, this is going to happen if you don't change your ways, right? And that to
Mhm.
me is something that science fiction took up. Is this something that you want to bring into your work? Because I think a lot of the science fiction of the past 40, 50 years has kind of moved away from that. It's kind of moved from away from that morality, from that sense of social responsibility, from prophecy, basically. So, is this something that can be accomplished? Is what I'm asking.
Well, the objective of, let's say, rather than looking at the means, but looking at the objective of improving the human condition, let's
Hmm.
say,
Hmm.
that might be, as we have mentioned, cautionary tales don't seem to work the way they were intended.
Right.
I don't know the full mechanism, but clearly there has to be a different approach. And one of the approaches that I'm working with in the book is the notion that um, w- there is a positive and negative side to creating your own reality.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
no, this that notion, by the way, that phrase, creating your own reality, that is like 70s new age. That I heard that phrase back. Remember the Seth material?
Oh gosh,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how old it is. I
yeah.
mean,
I'm
and
sure long
I'm
before
still
that.
of
Yeah.
a
Go
I
ahead.
mean, and
Yeah.
lately, the latest iteration comes from a guy who also channels. You probably heard of Bashir or Bashar. There's a guy in LA, Daryl Anka, who is
Yeah.
a special
Yeah.
effects artist, by the way. And his shtick is to get up in a Hawaiian shirt and go into trance, and he just starts talking in this rather stilted
Oh,
voice,
I hate all that stuff so
and making
much.
these pronouncements, and it's like, God
Oh,
Almighty, it's like
it's
and
so
this is like,
cringe.
it's like we're in the 2020s and this is still going on. But I just go, okay, supposing there is some truth, though, here's the thing where I talk about, suppose grifters do deliver the goods sometimes, but
Mm,
they're also tainted because, if you get the idea that your little ego is qualified to be shaping reality, well, this is like one of those traps you could get yourself into. It's like um, and probably the one of the more entertaining aspects, I think, of the reality benders is that I'm exploring this whole notion of supposing you really did have, or you and a bunch of your cult friends had the power to shift the timeline through psychedelic sex magic. Well, maybe there could be some unintended consequences. And I just
mm,
go, well, I mean, I'm willing to roll with that as a possibility that because we actually, supposing we actually are creating reality, but it is not just our conscious ego and it is not just us, meaning our little selves, because this whole notion of being a human being, of being an individual self, is really just like the tip of the iceberg. I don't think that that's who we ultimately are, and that we're operating within this huge spiritual context of
mm.
this whole, it's like an ecosystem of consciousness, as my inner guru pointed out years ago. I can't believe it's been, how many years has it been? It's been like, that was 2018. Holy cow. Um, the notion that we're the human species is like this one element in this vastly greater web of life,
Mm,
and
mhm, mhm.
and that that some of those other creatures out there might regard us as their pets or as food, or as
Charles
livestock to
Fort,
be
right?
milked.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
property.
well,
We are property.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, but then again, at the same time, supposing that is true and simultaneously we have potential to be part of this something much greater. Like, we might be like the junior grade angels who are in training, but we haven't gotten out of primary school yet because, we're just such dunces. So we're, but maybe there's hope for us yet. I mean, if there's hope for us, it's because actually there are instances where you could say if you look at the human history, you will find examples of um, prodigies who were written off early in life as being just so dumb that they're not going to amount to anything.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite saints, by the way, is what's his name? Joseph of Carpinteria, I believe. I have to look that up, but he's like the patron saint of slow students. And but I think his saving, his saving grace is that his faith was so pure. He was just like transcendental. He was the kind of guy who would go into ecstatic trances and then he would just start floating off the ground.
Mm.
I mean, he was just literally levitating, and people were converted on the spot by watching this and going, "Holy cow!" And um, so, and this guy was documented in the Renaissance period. He was in Italy,
Mm.
and in fact, he was even investigated by the Inquisition because they were suspecting him of witchcraft. But clearly, they realized, no, he's just a saint, I guess, just especially he's just too dumb to be a sorcerer, And I just think, wow, this is oddly enough, maybe
Saint Fool. Yeah.
it isn't always about how clever we are, is what I'm saying. I think maybe there's ways in which grace reaches us in spite of us, in spite of ourselves. And so my main character in the book, for instance, he's not a genius. He's not a hero. He's basically a damaged veteran of the
Mm.
global war on terror.
Mm.
And you might think, gosh, how did he get mixed up with this new age cult? Well,
Oh, I
actually,
wouldn't. I wouldn't
it's not.
wonder about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that there are quite a few veterans with PTSD who have been seeking treatment by going on ayahuasca retreats.
Mm.
This is not
Very true.
unusual now.
Very true.
So,
Yeah.
and it might actually be doing some good, provided, of course, that the people that they're working with are, above, are actually reputable and are not simply taking advantage of them.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I think about this stuff a lot, even though I'm personally
Well,
not,
you
thank
should.
goodness.
Somebody has to. Somebody has to think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
these
I
things.
mean,
Yeah.
figure this that the whole notion of the cult is something that it's never gone away. I mean, this has been part of my world. I mean, ever since I was a kid. I
Mm.
mean, part of local culture here is that
Mm.
San Francisco has just been a hotbed of cults.
Oh
And
yeah.
now
Oh
we have
yeah.
a
Yeah.
we have a high-tech cult right now, but prior to that, we had Satanists, we had the People's Temple, and we had,
The
I mean, there's
Moonies and everybody.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's been here. I mean, even Charlie Manson was here.
Yeah.
So, and I just go, wait a minute, maybe this says something about us where, as far as if you wanted a cautionary tale, there's something right there because I think that is probably going to continue to evolve the whole notion of, when people are so disconnected and so lacking in meaning and wanting,
Mm.
legitimately wanting all of
Mm.
that. Well, a cult could deliver the goods. Could be
Yeah.
exactly, and so we should expect a resurgence of that, and that we can, at least some of us can inoculate ourselves against it, because figure this, that every worldview is in a sense a mind virus. Now you could look at viruses as a negative thing, but I believe now, and this is, again, using a useful metaphor, using that the original mind virus that made us who we are is language, in my opinion.
Mm.
Learned
Hmm.
how to create symbol systems that represented our experience. And it could be, and it enters both through our eyes and our ears. We have sounds that we make with our mouths, and we have symbols that we can see with our eyes. And that's how the virus gets in. And then we suddenly start shaping our whole worldview based upon the things that we're saying to each other, just like we're doing right now. And it's like, wow, you can imagine that this is like one of the secrets that you could say the secret societies were working on from the very beginning. And if there's any kind of tradition, it's like how do they're probably been building upon that about, hey, you know what? All these rubes will believe what we say. And if we add some, a little bit of spectacle, a little bit of, uh, magic tricks, they'll believe everything we tell them.
Hmm. Well,
Wow. Can you
that's an
imagine?
excellent, yeah, that is
Yeah.
an excellent segue to,
Yeah.
what I really want to hit here, and that's the whole issue of AI, which is,
Oh God. Yeah.
talk about
Yes, dude.
fake reality and grifts and
Mm-hmm.
delusions and scams. Just today, Chat GPT is trying to basically get a handout of $1 trillion that they need to fight the AI wars, I guess. And some people
Uh,
say,
uh,
China's already won them,
mhm.
with their
Mhm.
programs. But we're in a situation now. I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that AI isn't what it's been sold to us as, and never will
Mhm.
be. And that,
Mhm.
we talked about the large language models. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed, every single time I interact with an AI, it gives me incorrect information. Always.
Mm, mm,
Every
mm,
single time. I cannot think of a single exchange that I've had with AI, whether Grok or ChatGPT, where I haven't been given very, very false information. And then situations where I'll get good information and then it will somehow drift into error as the conversation goes on. Now, the
mm,
thing that's concerning to me is that, we're hearing stories, I don't know if they're true or it's hype about AI psychosis. Um, People already have become addicted to AI.
mhm,
But the problem is that I don't believe that it can or will ever live up to its promises and live up to all the hype and live up to the religious nature of the culture.
mm,
So you're out in the belly of the beast, as you mentioned, and you are a science fiction writer, so it's your job to look at these things. What is your feeling as to where AI and basically AI madness is going to take us as a culture?
mm. Yeah, that's actually a big subject. And of course, I'm kind of immersed in it pretty much daily. I mean, I
Hmm.
could walk outside here and there are AI controlled robo taxis just cruising around. Sometimes they're empty, but they're often carrying passengers. People have learned how to accept that. It's like, it's amazing what people will accept after a while, when you
Hmm.
just, and the thing is, though, I got to make a distinction that the AI that controls the robotaxis is something else. I mean, in other words, it's not like something that manipulates language. It's simply given a job of drive down the street, try not to hit anything. It has a very limited, but it's very complicated. Of course, anybody who learns how to drive realizes there are so many variables. If you can possibly, and that's the reason why robotaxis are only deployed in cities where people tend to drive slowly and the conditions tend to be favorable. And yet they still have problems like, one of the Waymo cars supposedly ran over someone's cat the other day.
Oh,
You can imagine. Yeah, I mean, if a robotaxi ran over your dog, I think you would be properly incensed, rather, be plotting revenge a la John Wick, But But that's a different type of AI than the stuff that people are interacting with by, where they're saying words and the computer's saying words back to them. And golly, talk about, when we talk about language being a virus, now we've got this machine that's kind of this automated virus machine that's really not even in control of itself. This is the thing that's, and it's astonishing that, I mean, a few people have, at least around here, have finally figured out that it's not trustworthy. And thank goodness, like the law firm I used to work for, they have a policy against using AI for research. I mean, it's pretty obvious. If it's, when they talk about hallucinations, that's simply a way of almost soft pedaling the fact that it's malfunctioning. It's just plain wrong. Okay. So the idea of making life-changing decisions or anything, doing anything of consequence that relying upon an AI is just plain foolish. Um, and it's not the way things are. Well, I would say that to be charitable, it didn't have to be this way, although I can't prove to you that there are alternate pathways would have worked better because we're not really taking those alternate pathways. We don't, and unless I'm remote viewing other realities, which maybe I am doing. Okay, I'm not going to try to make that claim too boldly. I mean, Philip Dick did, but that doesn't mean that I should. But there are alternate pathways of development that would lead to computers that are structured more like the human brain. In other
Mm.
words, neuromorphic, neurosymbolic pathways, which there are people working on that stuff right now, but it's still very much in the research phase. Nobody knows how many years will go by before anything truly useful comes out of it. Same thing with biological computers. There are people who are literally growing human neurons and trying to turn those brain cells into computing devices, which is, that sounds very way out there, like Star Trek level, okay? But it's not impossible. It's just that nobody is going to make a huge profit off of those right away. And maybe that's the reason why the LLMs got so big, is that people figured out they could make money fast just by giving them some kind of product and then keep on sucking in more capital to try to make it better. It's almost like it's the scam reminds me in a way of what was their name, Elizabeth Holmes, and when
Oh, right. Yeah.
she had
The
this
blood.
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to analyze people's blood from a
Theranos.
single
Theranos
drop.
it was called. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's kind of like that, except
Yeah.
writ large, much, much
The
larger. I mean,
stakes
we're
are much
talking,
higher. Yeah.
oh God, yeah. I mean, it's been said that if the bubble pops, that it could sink the whole economy because so many billions of dollars have been invested in it. And it's like I'm hoping that at least some people who are in the finance world have already kind of figured out that they have to shuffle their portfolios, but do it in a way that doesn't cause a panic. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, maybe some people who are smart have already done this, and it's the people who are not so bright who are going to catch on later. And this is all going to come down in the coming year, okay? I'm not going to, don't want to be, I don't want to be too doomer about it, but
Mm.
I have a strong feeling that in this coming year, you know, going into 2026, that things are going to we're going to start to see something that could really shake things up. I mean, we've already had high-tech layoffs in the thousands. I don't know
Tens
how
of
much,
thousands, hundreds of
tens of
thousands.
thousands. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking nationwide, but I don't know what it is locally. I actually should look that up, what is going on right here in California. But I imagine that it's like here today, gone tomorrow. We really we're right now. It appears that we're doing okay. I mean, although I got to say that there is a disconnect between the superstructure of finance and the real world in which regular folks are trying to struggle to stay alive and feed themselves.
Mm,
There is
mm,
a big disconnect where it, it's almost like, yeah, the stock market continues to go up. It looks pretty darn good from that point of view, but from the human point of view, it's the system is working except for people. That's
mm,
so in a very real sense, where the dystopian aspect is that that really what makes it cyberpunk dystopia is that on paper things look pretty darn good, except that people are miserable. I mean, just and in fact, it wouldn't surprise me, and I don't want to be prophetic. I'm very careful about being prophetic. I just happened to just look at what what I see is that a lot of folks who are right on the edge, where they just don't feel like, there's anything to look forward to, they might start taking their own lives in larger numbers than we've seen already. I mean, I don't know if in the last few years, I don't know if I've lost two people to suicide that
mm.
really should not have happened. And that was mainly because of the pandemic. So imagine something similar that produces that kind of pressure where, um, either there could be any number of factors that could combine that could make someone decide life is no longer worth living. And that could be happening at any age. It doesn't have to be necessarily that they're older. They could be in the prime of life and still decide, no, there's no reason to stick around. That's a horrible prospect, but that is part of the human cost that, of cyberpunk dystopia. It's not a trivial thing. It's very real to me. And
Mm, mm.
if you may be in the same position. Maybe you've lost people this way, but it's a terrible thing. Um, so if people need a purpose, a reason to live, especially living through adversity, this is something that maybe a lot of previous generations, like our parents or grandparents' generations, might have been better acquainted with that about how to get yourself through hard times. If you don't know how to do that, this is a bad time to be around because supposing things get very Darwinian and you can you and also you have to learn how to stick together, meaning you find people to ally yourself with
Find the
to help you
others is
get
what they
through.
call it. Find the
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad. I don't have to go too much in my family history, but my dad went through World War II, and both my parents, in fact, went through World War II, and he was in the resistance when the Philippines was occupied by Japan, which was a pretty horrific period.
Mm,
And there were multiple times when I'm sure he felt his life was in danger and he could die at any moment. And there were a lot of veterans who were in that very same position in different parts of the world, and somehow they got through it. I mean, that doesn't mean that they were healthy people afterwards. I could tell you that my whole family, I think, has been affected by the PTSD in the
mm,
sense that in the sense that when some prominent person gets traumatized, it affects everybody around him.
mm,
And I think about that a lot because I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have veterans among my readership, but I like to believe that I'm taking their lives very seriously because both my father and my brother were career army guys. My brother, my elder brother, was in Vietnam, and imagine Vietnam veteran. That's pretty heavy stuff, no matter where you were.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and clearly, it does have knock-on effects. And when I look at where our civilization is at right now, America in particular, is that we're like two generations. Well, we're dealing with multi-generational trauma in the sense that, stuff that happened to our parents or our grandparents continues to build and then has effects on the succeeding generations. And
Mm.
if you think about why it is that so many, like in my own family, I realized that my father's side of the family, this particular branch of the family, so far nobody has had kids. And I'm thinking, what? Meaning, I have a nephew, I actually have two nephews, and they're now like getting into middle age, and neither of them have kids, which is unusual, particularly because they're Filipino descent. And
Mm.
I thought, wow, that's quite atypical. It's almost like when you think about the falling birth rate, this is not a small thing. This is happening everywhere
Mm.
in the first world, is that people are not having kids like they used to. And that's even though, yeah, people used to say, well, it's a good thing that we're not increasing the population. Well, then again, there's a point at which you go, wait a minute, something's wrong here. There's people should want to have kids, and then why aren't they? And
Well,
I don't know if
the
I'm
loss of
glad you did.
expertise is a major problem too. The
Yeah.
fact that
I
we're
mean,
going to
the
be
AI thing is
losing.
not helping.
No, it's not helping at all. Well,
Yes.
listen,
Yeah.
listen, Wayne.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
reconvene next month and get into
Mm.
more of the issues on your list. I don't want to call it a wish list because that's not appropriate, but on your very fascinating document that you sent me with all these different ideas. And like I said, we just barely scratched the surface now. I think we might have gone not even a third way
Oh, I
down the
think
page.
I'm glad we lasted this long, and my voice sometimes doesn't go this long. And I think maybe we just had such a good conversation that somehow I stick made it through. I'm
Well,
glad.
we'll
So
reconvene. We shall reconvene.
yeah,
This has been a
yeah.
very
Oh
long
yeah.
mystery hour, but again, Wayne,
And
thank you so
don't
much.
forget, don't
Oh yeah,
forget.
Wayne,
Read
Wayne's book,
read the
XF Ultra.
you should Yeah. If you're, this is one of my, X-Files was one of my formative influences. So if you're a
Oh,
fan,
fantastic.
absolutely,
Yeah,
positively.
yeah.
I gotta say, Chris, your obsession is a gift. Okay.
My
You've turned it,
OCD.
your OCD is now, it's a superpower now. Thank goodness, you know. Okay. So thank you.
Well, thank
And
you, Wayne. Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in to the Secret Sun Radio Mystery Hour. And like I said, we need to get back together next month, Wayne, and dig
yeah.
more into these issues because this is very important stuff that you're addressing. You are really digging into a lot of things that every science fiction or speculative fiction or whatever writer should be addressing.
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe they're
I'm
not, but
appreciative.
these are issues that we always need to discuss. Now, I mean, just in closing, one thing that I always think about is that I remember when I was taking martial arts, the sensei there would always make the black belts, do all the basic forms. And it's like, because that
Mhm.
the basic forms were all at the core of the entire art, and all the higher, the higher forms and everything were all based on those movements in like the first five or six forms.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Now, what I'm trying to say here is that we need to always be reminding ourselves about big issues and always be discussing big issues and always be thinking about them and always be asking ourselves questions about them because it's all too easy to lose those skills, lose the skills of inquiry, to lose the skills of conversation, and all these other things that are getting lost because everybody's staying up all night talking to ChatGPT. So we shall get into this again, but I really want to thank you for joining me, and I'm glad you're on the mend. I'm glad you're healthy. You look great. I'm very excited about the book, and I understand that it's going to be a while, and I'm fine with that. But you know, don't drag it out too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my faith is that when it comes out, it'll be at the right time.
Yeah.
there's a thing about timing, about
Absolutely.
who
Oh,
knows.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure who knows what the world is going to be like a year from now.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, dropping a certain kind of like, a little truth bomb or something at the right moment could just like, you have no idea. I'm just proceeding on faith here, okay? But
Mm.
I'm very appreciative. I'm glad we got to talk, and I'm looking forward to it. More of the same or better, So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well,
Thank
the
you.
time just zipped by. I'm looking at the clock going,
Yeah,
wait a
I
minute.
know.
How did that happen? How did we just,
Yeah.
it's at least, what,
Well, I
over an hour and a half. So,
Yeah, well, I have to say that if anybody stuck it out this long, I really appreciate it because, time and attention are precious. I mean,
mm,
goodness knows. I mean, I have a hard time with attention span, just like everybody else. And
we all do. Yeah.
if you found this worthwhile, thank goodness. I mean, I would, it would, I'd never ever want to feel like, our time was wasted here because I have a feeling that you think it was worthwhile, and I'm so tickled, you know. So I'm just hoping other folks do too. So
I'm sure they will. I
anyway,
particularly in the
yeah,
Secret Sun universe,
yeah,
I can
yeah,
vouch for them. They're a very smart and savvy group, and I'm not just saying that
yeah,
to compliment them.
yeah.
I'm not trying to
Well,
blow smoke or anything like that. All right, well, listen,
yeah, well,
we've just got to stop because we're just going to keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, and we shall talk soon. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And we